Good day, students, and welcome to today's lesson. Yesterday, we talked about demand, definition of demand, types of demand, difference between demand and want and need, factors affecting demand. Today, we are going to round off demand. We are going to look at the concept of abnormal demand and then go into supply. Lesson objectives. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to 1. Explain the meaning of abnormal or exceptional demand. 2. Give reasons for the occurrence of abnormal demand. 3. Differentiate between changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand. Define the term supply. Describe supply schedule and supply curve. Explain the types of supply. State the factors affecting supply. Differentiate between change in quantity supplied and change in supply. Explain exceptional or abnormal supply. Now, what is abnormal demand or exceptional demand? Exceptional abnormal demand curve. We are told that normal demand curve slopes downwards from the left to the right. So anything that goes contrary to it is abnormal. If you see a demand curve that slopes upwards, it's abnormal. So, and we equally say that the natural thing or the normal thing is that an increase in price brings about a decrease in quantity demanded. And a decrease in price increases quantity demanded. So if as price increases, quantity demanded increases, then it's abnormal. And in that case, the demand curve will not slope downwards from left to the right. So a normal demand curve has a negative slope. That is, it slopes downwards from left to the right. Abnormal or exceptional demand are demand curve patterns which do not abide by the laws of demand and therefore give rise to a reverse of the basic laws of demand. So abnormal demand do not obey the law of demand. The law of demand states that as price increases, quantity demanded decreases, and as price decreases, quantity demanded increases. For example, at higher prices, increased quantities are demanded. So anytime an increase in price elicits an increase in quantity demanded, then it becomes abnormal. An exceptional demand curve is one which does not have a downward sloping demand curve. You were told that normal demand curve is downward sloping. It slopes downwards from the left to the right. It is negatively sloped. But if it becomes positively sloped, or it curves in a certain particular way, or when there's an increase in price, quantity demanded increases, then it's exceptional or abnormal. You can see a demand curve which has a positive slope is abnormal. It is very, very abnormal. You can see this is the price, this quantity demanded. If anytime you see something like this, it is abnormal demand curve. The demand curve here slopes upwards from left to the right, showing that more will be bought at higher prices. Normally, as price increases, quantity demanded decreases. But in this case, we can see that as price increases, quantity demanded increases. Quantity demanded increases, making it abnormal. Why? What are the reasons for abnormal demand curve? What will make consumers to buy more of a commodity at a higher price than at a lower price? That's what we want to look at. Reasons for the occurrence of abnormal demand. One is articles of ostentation. People want to belong. People want to exhibit their wealth. Goods that have what we call snob effect. People buy it to distinguish the boys from the men, or the men from the boys, the girls from the women. They want to belong. So such commodities as their prices increase, quantity demanded decreases. So articles of ostentation. These are commodities consumers use to show off or exhibit their wealth. They are commodities with snob appeal. In this case, consumers believe that the higher the prices of such commodities, the more valuable they are. What are the examples? Luxurious cars. The more expensive cars are bought by the very rich to distinguish them from the average people. Gold, diamond, expensive laces. People buy them when their prices are higher to show off, exhibit their wealth. So because of articles of ostentation, that's one of the reasons we have abnormal demand. Another thing is expectation of future changes in price. or fear of future changes in price. If people are fearing, if people are anticipating that prices will rise in future, what do they do now? People will rush to buy. Even when the prices are rising, they will continue to buy because prices will still further rise in future. So they buy more now. Again, when the prices are anticipated to fall in future, they will hold their purchases now. Even when the prices are very low, they will still not buy until at a future date. The third one is rare commodities. These are commodities that are very rare. You don't see them often. So people are willing to buy them at any price, like antiques. These are olden things that are distinct from what we have today. So each time you see such things, they are very expensive. Nevertheless, the demand for them is normal at lower prices. At lower prices, prices of antiques or rare commodities are very normal. But as their prices begin to increase, the rich will buy them. Once it becomes beyond the reach of the ordinary man. Other things that cause abnormal demand are inferior goods or gifting goods. This one, gifting goods, was taken after the man that initiated it, Robert Giffen. Gifting goods are not named after an economist, Sir Robert Giffen, who discovered the behavior connected with inferior goods among Irish peasants. Inferior goods or gifting goods are those goods whose demand falls as price falls. Gifting goods are those goods that are normally bought by the poor. They buy it not because it gives them perfect satisfaction, but that's how much the much they can buy, the money they have can afford at the time. So when their prices go down, they will buy few, and they use the other money they have to buy other goods they would have wanted to buy. So inferior goods are those goods whose demand decreases as price decreases. So we can see inferior goods, look at when the price decreases. When at normal price demand, abnormal demand at lower prices, you can see when the price decreases, quantity demanded of it decreases as well. We also have other reasons for abnormal demand. Is infinitely or perfectly elastic demand curve. Look at the demand curve. Demand is said to be perfectly elastic when the demand curve is horizontal. You can see on the vertical axis we have the price. On the horizontal axis we have quantity demanded. Quantity demanded here. And then the price is equivalent to the demand curve, which is horizontal. Another one is a zero elastic or perfectly inelastic demand curve. Perfectly inelastic demand curve is a demand curve that has a vertical demand curve. The demand curve is vertical, implying that irrespective of changes in price, quantity demanded remains constant. Whether price is increasing or decreasing, the same quantity is bought. A likely example of this is salt. You cannot, because the price of salt has fallen so low, instead of using 1 spoon to cook, you now increase it to 3 because the price is low. So when a change in price, whether an increase or decrease, brings about no change at all in the quantity demanded of a commodity, zero elastic demand curve results. Example is salt. Any question? Okay. Now the next thing we want to look at is difference between changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand. Please take particular note of these changes or the difference, because they always ask it in your exams. The difference between changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand. Those two words are not synonyms. They are not used interchangeably. They mean different things. So changes in demand, changes in quantity demanded and changes in demand, like I said, are not the same thing. Changes in demand arises when there's a change in the price of a commodity, with other factors affecting demand remaining constant. What have I said? that changes in quantity demanded is affected by only one factor out of the factors affecting demand. It is only the price of the commodity that affects changes in quantity demanded. So it's assumed that other factors are held constant. Here, when there's this changes in quantity demanded, from this our diagram, on the vertical axis we have the price of this commodity. Then we have quantity demanded on the horizontal axis. We can see when there's a change in quantity demanded, the demand curve, the same demand curve is used. There's a movement along the same demand curve. There's a movement from one point to another. There's no shift. It does not involve shift. There's a movement. Like here, when the price of this commodity is 200, quantity demanded is 200. So we can see there's intersection at point A. At this point A, the price is 200 naira, while the quantity demanded of bags of maize is 200. Now, when the price fell from 200 naira to 150 naira, quantity demanded increased from 200 to 300. We can see there's a movement from point A to point B. Remember, I told you that changes in quantity demanded is brought about by only one factor affecting demand, and that is price. Again, one thing you must also notice is that when there's a change in quantity demanded, there is a movement along the same demand curve, like from here, from point A to point B, when there's a decrease in quantity, when there's a decrease in price. But if there is an increase in price from 150 to 120, quantity demanded will decrease from 300 to 200, and then there will be a movement from point A to point B. Note, like I said, price is the only factor that brings about change in quantity demanded, while other factors are held constant. Now, the other one is a change. Remember, anytime you're hearing a change in quantity demanded or change in demand, change is either increase or decrease. So when there's a change, we have talked about change in demand, quantity demanded. Now, change in demand, what brings about change? When there's a change in demand is affected by all other factors affecting demand except price. That means when there's a change in demand, the price is constant. Price is held constant. And then when there's a change in demand, there's a shift in the demand curve, either outwardly or inwardly. There's an outward shift in the demand curve indicating an increase in demand. While when there's an inward shift of the demand curve, it indicates or depicts a decrease in demand. From figure 1, we can see here we have the price, here we have quantity demanded. Remember, I said when there's a change in demand, price is constant. Change in demand is brought about by all the changes in factors affecting demand except price. So when at this price, quantity demanded initially was Q1. Now all of a sudden, at this same price, quantity demanded, there was a shift of the demand curve from D1 to D2, D2. And there's increase in quantity demanded from Q1 to Q2. What must have caused it? Why the price remains constant? One of the reasons that must have caused it could be as a result of increase in population. Could be as a result of change in weather condition. Could be during rainy season. Demand for raincoat and rain boots are on the increase. Now figure 2 says there's a shift of the demand curve from D1 to D2, D2, while price remains constant. And quantity demanded decreased from Q1 to Q2. It could be attributed to so many factors. Like I said, population decrease. It could be that the number of people that in the country has decreased, or the change in taste. People no longer have appetite for this particular commodity, so the quantity demanded has decreased, or as a result of change in weather conditions. If you bring very cold thing in rainy season, you're on your own. So having said that, that is the explanation. Just note the keynote is that change in demand and change in quantities demanded are not the same. Change in demand is brought about by all the factors affecting demand except price. That when there's a change in demand, price is constant. So, and then when there's a change in demand, there's a shift of the demand curve, either outwardly or inwardly. The demand curve shifts outwardly when there's an increase in demand, while an inward shift in demand curve depicts a decrease in demand. While the other one, which is change in quantity demanded, is brought about by is affected by only one factor, which is change in price, while other factors are held constant. When there's a change in quantity demanded, the demand curve does not shift. Rather, it moves from one point to another. Are we following? We have exhausted the theory of demand. The next we want to look at is theory of supply. Of course, supply is the opposite of demand. Supply refers to the quantities of any commodity that producers are able and willing to offer for sale at alternative prices over a given period of time. So like I said, supply is opposite of demand. Everything that happens in demand is the opposite. The opposite will happen in supply. When you're looking at demand, you're looking at things from the consumer side. But under supply, you're looking at the producers or the sellers. And we know that producers or sellers are in business to maximize profit, while the consumers are maximizing their satisfaction. So the quantity of any commodity which sellers or producers are willing to offer for sale at various prices at a given time is called supply. The law of supply is not the same thing as the law of demand. The law of demand states that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and vice versa. But the law of supply states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. All things being equal. Just like we have demand supply, or demand schedule, we equally have supply schedule. What is supply schedule? Supply schedule is a table that shows different quantities of a commodity supplied at various prices. We equally have two types of supply schedule. We have individual supply schedule and market supply schedule. Individual supply schedule is a table for one individual, for one person. It is a table that shows the various quantities of a commodity supplied by an individual at various prices. While the market supply schedule is the totality of all the quantities of a commodity supplied by the sellers of a commodity, sellers of this different commodity at various prices and at a particular point in time. From this table, we can see this is a table representing the market supply schedule. The first column represents the price of this commodity. Here we have quantity supplied by the various sellers or the various producers. We have Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. And then we sum up these various quantities supplied by the individual producers. It gives you the market supply or the total quantity supplied. So we have the price and then the total quantity supplied. This is the market. The market price. In this market, it's assumed that we have just three producers of this particular commodity. And who are these producers? Mr. A, B, and C. So we sum up, when add up the totality of the quantity they are willing and able to supply at any given price, you have the market supply. So when the price of this commodity was 1,000 naira, quantity supplied by Mr. A, B, C is 1,100. As the price decreased from 1,000 to 800, quantity supply decreased from 1,100 to 880. In that order, it continues as price continues to decrease. You can see, as price decreases, quantity supplied decreases, meaning that they are directly related. Unlike demand and price that are inversely related, price and quantity supplied are directly related. As one increases, as price increases, quantity supplied decreases. But as price decreases, quantity supplied decreases. You can see when the price decreased to 200, quantity supplied decreased to 250. That is for supply schedule. Now let's look at supply curve. Supply curve, of course, is when we represent this table in a graph or in a diagram. We call it supply curve. So we have individual and private supply curve. The individual supply curve represents the individual supply schedule, while the market supply curve represents the market supply schedule. This one stands for individual supply schedule. We are using it to represent whatever. You can see this one represents this table. Once you're drawing it, you use the price on the vertical price. One thing you must note is that price is always on the vertical axis, while quantity, either quantity supplied or demanded, will be on the horizontal axis. So we can see from this diagram that supply curve slopes upwards from the left to the right, meaning that supply curve is positively sloped. Unlike demand curve, which is negatively sloped, supply curve is positively sloped, implying that as price increases, quantity supplied increases.